why now? Why we need great leadership now? All the more in a crisis, it matters exponentially more. And that's really true, you see. Sometimes, as I told you, leaders are people who have to make decisions. And in a crisis, if you don't make the decision, what will happen? And I think I do not want to name the countries in the world. Just this COVID-19, coronavirus, different countries in the world choose to handle the situation differently. And when we talk about a country, who runs a country? Our leaders. Our leaders are supported by a group of people. A company is supported by a group of management team. A family have got a head of a family, it is husband and wife and children. So who make the decision? Who lead through a crisis? And that's why I would say that here, for those of you who are here listening who are maybe bosses of the company or team leaders of or your own sales team, or for that matter, whoever you are, or you're a manager, if you're someone who's just doing your job yourself, it really doesn't matter to me. And why I think in a crisis is so much more important, simply because any crisis, people desperately want to believe their leaders know what they are doing. And that's very important. Can you imagine in a crisis? I mean, a crisis, we don't need to talk about a pandemic of a COVID situation, but a crisis in a family, when someone gets sick or being critically ill or diagnosed something that is very severe, cancer, stage 4, and any of these things. These are crises in a family. Or in a crisis of someone made a mistake, something is a crisis. How do we deal and move on? And that's where whoever you are in a family or in a company or in you have to stand up. You have to make the decision. You have to come forward, because people, there will be others who will be looking towards you for directions. And that's why we say in a crisis, people really desperately want to believe. But as leaders, what do we do? Do we give them that confidence? And one of the key things here is this. If you look at it, great leaders trust their people with the truth, and they make hard decisions guided by the key word, guided by the keywords, values and principles, not just by popularity or for short-term benefits. That is the real truth. A strong leader, first and foremost, we have to tell the truth. If you want to just mask the situation, or you do not want to tell a true picture, or you do not want to admit and you are not open, then I think over time you will lose your ability to lead, because people will come to know. So, and trust. We have to trust the people. I mean, as a head of the family, you have to trust the children, and you have to trust the people around you. And that goes in a company. And one of the key things that in this slide that I highlight here is this: they make hard decisions guided by values and principle. Let us go and further reflect on values and principle. I think this is very important. Okay, I think there's one more slide that I'm going to talk about values and principle, and that is equally very, very important. Okay. Leaders who trusted the people with the truth are trusted more in return. You see, the whole element about leadership has got to do with a huge amount of trust. Do you think I can be a strong leader to lead my men in a battlefield without trusting them that they will do the right thing to overcome a task given? And that goes to in a commercial world. If I want to do many things and I have got many people and I don't trust them that they're capable, and I only think I am the one and the only good one who's capable, how is it going to happen? Yeah, as long as I trust people with the truth, And in return, what do I benefit as a leader? I get more trust. It's like you giving love, you get more love. You trust people with the truth, and you get trusted more. But what it means to me as a leader too, do not betray their trust. The minute you betray their trust, there is a danger. Because when they look towards a leader, they even put their lives in your hands. I mean, in a battlefield, yes, when a commander or leader says, let's move on, let's charge, let's conquer, live bullets coming in, their life. But not only that, even in a crisis like in a COVID, yeah, whether are we able to bring back and earn the income, are we going to do the right thing? It is all purely hugely dependent on what the leaders are going to roll out to support the people. And that's one of the reasons why as leaders we will have to work with so much more energy, passion, and foresight. In addition to truth, people support a leader. Even he can be charismatic or not, it doesn't matter. But more importantly, one with humility. And that is really, really very important to a huge extent, simply because I think people tend to feel a leader who becomes so cocky, a person who thinks that he knows and he has the answers to every singular thing, eventually over time will lose the support of his people again. Yep. So there were a couple of things that we talked about. Yep. So in a crisis, all the more it is important, and it is about trusting people. And leadership is also again about having been humble enough to connect with the people to understand. Okay. So humble leaders make self. Okay, just reflect on this. Humble leaders make themselves smaller than the moment they create space for others to do things together. You see, sometimes as leaders, we know many things. Maybe we are well endowed in terms of knowledge because we have read, we have got a past experience, or maybe because you have run or done things multiple times, but you have a group of team of people. But how do you nurture them? Because you see, as leaders, you have to trust them. In order to trust them, you have to give them the necessary exposure. Yeah. And in order to do that, it is not about saying, I did it all by myself. It is never about the I. It is about being able to create space for others to do big things together. I mean, if you look at it as far as the PropNex as a company that we have grown, it is never about me. It is about a group of people working together to achieve bigger things. And that's equally important. So therefore, every one of you are out there. If you want to achieve so much more, humble yourself and create space for others. Okay, good. Now, the next couple of minutes, I'm going to spend a fair bit about on myth. I think this is important because you see, as I said, the first session, I just want to clear the mind and so that every one of us have got a very clear understanding about leadership. Okay, definition. First and foremost, when I start to keep talking about myth, I don't want people to get confused. Definition of myth, a widely held but false belief or idea, which means it is not a fact. It is just a false belief. An idea, or another way it is, you're going to find the definition, an idea or story that many people believe, but which is not true. Why I touch on this here is because the next couple of slides, we are going to talk about leadership's myth. Okay, let's go on to the first myth. One of the key things here is this. Always people tend to say that leaders must be charismatic. Yep. And I'm quite sure when you reflect yourself and say, hey, I'm a leader, yes. Yeah, Mr. Ismail, you tell me all of us are leaders, so I accept it. So we are all leaders. I can accept that. But the next question here is this. Strong leaders, leaders of a nation, leaders of a company, leaders of a football team, a leader of on any place must be charismatic. I am not a charismatic person. I'm an introvert. I don't like to talk to people. In fact, if you give me a choice, I just like to do my work my own way and in a quiet way. Okay, so myth one, and that is important for us to get it clear here, is leaders must be charismatic is not true. Though some leaders are charismatic, though, yeah. Here we have got 3 examples. Donald Trump obviously is charismatic in many of his ways, yeah. But there are also leaders who are not charismatic. In fact, charismatic leaders, being charismatic is an advantage, it helps, but not necessarily all charismatic leaders are effective leaders. Hitler was a charismatic leader. He moved people, millions of people. And how did we end up during those days? So it is not about how charismatic you are. But the first question here is this: leaders need not be charismatic. Nelson Mandela, how did he fought for freedom? And what about founder of, okay, you see, many of us know, or if you talk about Facebook or Microsoft, or these days we can relate, but would you know, if we mention the name of, let's say, founder of Sony, Akio Morita, I think maybe 95% of us who are hearing right now may not have a clue. So what's so good about it? But do you know today, if you talk about Sony, Sony is a $80 billion worth company, 70 over to 80 on the different sources say, but they are such a huge company that they have grown. Why am I trying to highlight here is this: when Sony was formed during its founding years, Ibuka and Akio Morita were the 2 founders. They started the company in a very small rental room, but they were so clear in their mind. They were both not charismatic out there, but they were very clear in their mind that they are going to create innovation as the biggest value that they want to bring to the world. And those days when we talk about transistor radio in the 50s and 60s, right now we all, every few months there are new gadgets. We are talking about when transistor radios was not a norm. A radio of a pocket size was not a norm. But why am I trying to say? Visionary leaders, they were not charismatic, but they go there, they are thinkers, they create things, and they founded a company based on their values. It's about who they are. So that's my point. So if you're charismatic, good for you. If you're not charismatic, not bad, because in the crowd there are many huge number of leaders who are not charismatic, but they are also leaders. Okay, so that's the first point that we want to make it clear. Okay, myth 1. Let's go on to myth 2. Successful leaders play it safe. Okay, what do I mean by that here is this. People sometimes tend to think, again, myth means it's not true. Successful leaders play it safe. I'm only just giving it to 1 or 2, but hundreds of people and so on. I mean, successful leaders are people who make bold decisions, many a time guided by core values. And that's equally important. Okay, fine. When I talk about not playing it safe, I'm not talking about leaders being irrational. Okay, and one of the people, I mean, the myth here is this: people think, oh, he became a successful leader because he makes sure that every time he make a decision, he always want to play it safe. He want to buy votes. He want to be a popular guy. He's a popular group. No. You see, one of the hard facts and the truth about leadership is about making that hard decision, guided by your values, and to be bold enough to move things when you do. I mean, when you look at it, all of us know Jack Ma, yeah. And for those of you who have read his story, his struggles, how he was, even because of his facial looks, people don't even gave him a chance, rejected him. Was he charismatic on his younger days? You think so? So you look back at it, he wasn't charismatic those days. Yeah. In Silicon Valley, when he was he was not welcome because he don't have good looks. Maybe he's an Asian, whatever stigma he carried. But today, look at him. So what was in him made him a leader, not about what other people think about him. When he founded Alibaba, yeah, employees to think big, work for their dreams. You see, this is again exactly a classic example of a leader, because one Jack Ma would not be able to build a team. Yep, and in online business with some 100 million shoppers a day and higher revenues than Amazon and eBay combined. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine? We are talking about Amazon and eBay combined and higher revenues. But this is one person who wasn't charismatic, but what was in him. And what does he spread to his people? And whatever his achievement is not by one person. So leadership is about each and every one starting to believe immediately that we are a good and able leader. That is the shift in our mind. That is the most important. Okay, another example. If you say myth, leaders play it safe. Okay, most of you know Aung San Suu Kyi, a Nobel Prize winner, gave up a freedom and a life with a family in Britain to protest the military rule in Burma, now known as Myanmar, and nearly 2 decades of house arrest. But today, she's in a political party, dozens of seats in parliament in Myanmar. So why don't she play it safe? He says his life is important and he's in Britain, I'm having life to come. But no, but what was in her was very different. Because she carried some values and principle that she is not prepared to compromise. It doesn't matter whether she was in Britain and her family was there, but she felt her roots and she was so passionate, she was so deeply connected, and she wanted to make a difference. It's not about her life. It is not about playing it safe. So that's what I meant by successful leaders don't play it safe. Okay, let's move on to myth 3. Sorry. We talked a fair bit about it, what is that in terms of values. I think this is very important. I think of all the topic that I'm talking about for this today, less than an hour or so, we talked about a couple of things, core values. What is this core values? Yeah. What do we understand? Values. Yeah, there are many. I mean, if you go on Google, you just go and hit the button and say core values. I tell you, hundreds of it, few hundreds of values will come. There. I mean, here I've highlighted a couple of it. Meritocracy, honesty, accountability, compassion, credibility, discipline, self-reliance, empathy, autonomy, entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs, respect and concern, tolerance, gratitude, humility, and there are hundreds more. So now I'm going to ask you a question. You are a leader, and if you want to model after a successful leader, what core value should you be embracing? So the myth here is this: successful leaders share specific core values. I think almost true, every successful leaders have a certain specific core values of honesty, integrity, telling the truth, that one we cannot run away. But my message to each and every one of you here is this, just like this, the earlier example. The core values of Aung San Suu Kyi and the core value of Jack Ma and the core value of Donald Trump, core values of Nelson Mandela, and the core values of the founder of Sony, do you think are all the same core values? Definitely not. So that's my message. My message here is this: people tend to think successful leaders have specific core values. That's why they are successful. And therefore, if I want to be successful, in order to emulate them, I must also have that similar. No, that honest truth is no. Be yourself who you are. But my next question here is this: how deeply rooted are your core values? I mean, obviously, if your core values is rotten to start with, lack of honesty, integrity, you want to cheat, you want to do things shortcut, and if you are not disciplined, if you are lazy, these are also values, yeah, then obviously, then you are not going to be a successful leader because there's an inherent problem. But now looking at all the positive core values, so you cannot have said that all the 100 I have. Okay, if someone have little bit lack of tolerance, but on the other hand, someone who has got a greater amount of empathy, obviously, someone who has got more empathy, got more gratitude, someone who wants to move the world based on to support the underprivileged, it really doesn't matter. So, okay, one of the key messages that I'm trying to tell you is I think something is very important to all of us to now start to reflect. What are my core values? What is my strength? What do I die for? What do I want to be remembered as a person when I leave this and when I leave this world, that I stood by my values from day one? And that's something is good for us to understand and to identify. Then we can work on our core values to be much better person. Use our strength. So the myth 3 here is, it is not true that all leaders have a similar specific core values. Each of us are unique in our own, and we must understand what our core values, and let's work on our core values. Let's move on to the next myth. Visionary leaders are fun to work with. So how? You know, sometimes leaders are very demanding, even yourself. So what do you want to be? As a leader in your office, in your family, in your team, do you want to be a fun leader? A leader who is always, I mean the photo that is showing on this side, I don't expect the leader, you are the bosses, means you, in office environment, you've been pushing people around, so there's so much of fun. No, I am just trying to say here is this: we need to get the myth out, which is not true. It is not true that leaders, all leaders are very easy and fun to work with. Put it this way. I mean, we know our modern founding father of Singapore, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. He's firm, he's tough, and everyone respect him, but not necessarily he must create a soft working environment. People who are aligned with the values of this leader, you will still have fun. But when and how do you understand the support the leader makes a difference? Let's put it this way: in a family, we have got children, grandparents, and as well as mom and dad. Yeah. So I'm, as a leader of the family, it's my duty to take care and provide the safety for my children, and at the same time I need to provide an environment that nurtures creativity, growth, fun. But does that mean I don't have discipline? Does that mean I don't set rules? Therefore, it's important, and it is not true. If a leader is very good, he must be fun to work with. But that is not to be seen in a negative way. Therefore, leaders, strong leaders, you have to have that discipline. You will have to have that strong firmness in you to make the decision. That's important. This is another very interesting thing. Visionary leaders makes their best moves by brilliant and complex planning. What do you think? So if you want to be a very strong leader, therefore you must be first and foremost very brilliant person, and you have to do a lot of hard work. The honest truth is not. That's why it's a myth. I mean, put it this way. I mean, for those of you who have known and those of you who have heard a little bit about me and so on, and my journey was just like that. I think I will attest to it that I'm not the most brilliant person, and I'm not one who had the most complex or very detailed in planning. I mean, if you ask me a question, Mr. Ismail, were you certain or were you aware, was it your dream to build the Singapore largest real estate company when you entered the real estate industry? If I come and say, yes, it was a vision I had, and I'm honestly not being truthful, I'm a liar. You know, why am I being hard on me? Because the truth of the matter is yes, because I didn't plan such a very complex plan to say that I want to be. But what I did here is this. Visionary leaders are leaders who take that little step every day, incremental improvement and adding value to everything that they do, that they develop and make it bigger and create more value add through the process. Yeah. So where do we start? Okay, now we are talking about leadership. So where do we start? And my answer here is this. Let's start from where we are. Look at many of the things that we are doing. How do we take that little steps to improve? What are we guided by? Our core values. Let's understand our core values. What are the principles that you are not going to compromise just because somebody is going to sway you to do things the other way? But first and foremost, you must also be certain your core values are guided in the right direction. That's equally important. Okay, so we have talked about, let me come to the myth number 6. Yeah. Successful leaders focus on beating others to prove their ability. Oh, he's really a very good leader because PropNex is today #1 because they focus on beating others. They want to make sure they beat everyone so that they are #1. I don't think so. It works that way. I think successful leaders focus on themselves. If you're in an environment and if you have got in the working place or there are a few other leaders, and if you think I want to be better than him so that I want to beat him, let me tell you, these are short term and it doesn't work. Yeah, you can always get inspiration to be as good or better than him, but I think the focus should be about yourself. Where is your improvement? Where is the value add? Only when you start focusing on your own self, then things work. Okay, so today what we have done here is this. We have touched on a couple of things. Okay, so first we talked about in a crisis, all the more it's important to have strong leadership. And then we talk about the 6 myths, so that it is important that we don't fall for this trap. And one of the key things here is this timeless principle of effective leadership is empowerment. And the only way to achieve this is to create a culture of trust, which is what I started off at the start. Okay, it's about a culture of trust. An effective leader loves people and wants to help them. So it all have to go back deep in you that you're not trying to do a show for short-term gain. It is not about you wanting to do something to impress upon so that you feel that you're better than the others. It is not about achieving all the things by yourself, but being able to create space for other people to do the big things together. Yeah. So this is what it all to have a better understanding about leadership. Okay. So I know that I've come to about 45 minutes. I'm going to just take next couple of more minutes, less than 5 minutes to wrap this up, and I will let the host ask a couple more questions. So today my whole objective, and I hope I have achieved this, here is this for the almost 1,600 of you who are listening to me. And maybe if you have been waiting, hey, Mr. Ismail, I was expecting so much more. You would have exactly told me, fine, wait next week. Next week, I am going to give you what are the effective traits of a leader. Therefore, at least you can have some examples or some things to say, okay, if you say these are the traits, let me understand more so that I can improve to be a better leader. So that's something that I'm going to discuss next week about the same time, about 45 minutes and so on. And then I will lead on and the subsequent weeks, and I will build it up. By the week number 4, I'm going to talk about the financial freedom, being a leader, and effectively building a legacy on the 5th week through being a strong leader and the leadership qualities. So this is the 5 weeks program. So with that, I hope every one of you, first and foremost, accept that we are all leaders. And let's come to this journey about making a decision. We have to make decision.